Welcome to the M Word podcast, where today's leaders share the keys to their success and the tough lessons and mistakes they made along the way in our uncensored conversations on marketing and more. I'm your host, Jennifer Mulchandani, and you are listening to the M Word podcast presented by Arlington Strategy. This special two-part episode of the M Word takes a unique turn with a group discussion on the Barbie movie. Past podcast guests Karen Bate, Cheryl Fischer, and Whytni Kernodle joined me in a lively discussion recorded in my home following a movie screening. Listen in as we explore the intricacies of the Barbie movie, delving into diverse topics ranging from societal expectations and gender norms to personal experiences with self-image, relationships, and the wisdom that comes with age. And if you've seen the movie, let us know what you think by leaving a comment on our social media. Enjoy part one of this very special episode of the M Word. All right, welcome to a special episode of the M Word, and I'm here with Whytni Kernodle, Karen Bate, and Cheryl Fischer after a very special screening of the Barbie movie. Only Whytni hasn't seen it before, is that right?
Yes, actually, yes. This was my first time.
Okay, instant reaction, first reaction.
Ooh, that's a good question. Intense. Because it's been out for so long, I had heard about it, I'd read about it, so it wasn't new to me, but I was still really very much emotionally engaged, and it was powerful. It was powerful.
I saw a couple tears at the end for
Absolutely.
you. Like what did that to you?
I think that just for me, it was the concept not just of the female empowerment piece, because that's what people talk about with the movie, but it's more the concept of the juxtaposition between female empowerment or just femaleness and how that plays a part or role in maleness. And those concepts were really, that hit me hard as a mother of male children. And I don't think I was also ready for the mother-daughter part, because again, as someone who has male children, I didn't realize how much of it would remind me of my relationship of my own mother as a daughter, right?
Wow,
because
yeah.
So as someone who has been mothering for 18 years, I'm constantly thinking about my mothering, but I don't necessarily have the time to reflect on the daughtering that I do, and it reminded me of that. So it was those things that really those were...
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Cheryl, how many times have you seen the movie?
This was my second time, and actually, as you're saying that, the first time I saw it was my daughter making me go with her to see it. And so everything you're just saying, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I think I raised a daughter who is really empowered. And she basically forced me to go and see it because I thought it was going to be silly. And that's like resonating with me really hard right now. So I appreciate everything you said. Yeah.
Well, and Karen, what about you? You're a mom of 3 girls, right?
I am, and I saw it never got to see it in the theater. I just saw it a month ago with my oldest daughter. She came over and made us sit down and watch it with her. Same thing, because she texted me from the movie theater and said, "This movie is so amazing. I'm sobbing at the end." And she was just so inspired by the women empowerment message. And again, we all have men in our lives. We all live with men, fall in love with men, marry men, or have sons or brothers or fathers. And that whole piece, which is kind of subtle, and I got it more this second time around, about how the women's empowerment transformed the men in a way and made them kind of get it.
So I got it the second time more too, that it's not about all the women have to be in charge or all the men have to be in charge and one's right and one's wrong. It needs to be more balanced than that or something. And that's a message I got this time more than the first time too. So I would agree with you.
I just have to say too, and this is kind of crazy, but it's just like every other conflict in the world. And we've got a big one going on right now where there's people with a lot of passionate viewpoints and points of view. And we are all human. We all want to have agency over ourselves. And if we could all just figure that out somehow as human beings, and the women and men thing has been for the ages, and this current horrible situation in the Middle East is just kind of the same thing, but on a different level. Yes. But we're all human.
But can I say, like, this is the second time I saw it, and what I saw this time, and it bugged me, was this whole, like, you know, I'm enough. That it was the Kens, like, I'm Knuff, I'm enough. And I wondered, like, I felt like it's sort of mocking, you know, how, like, and here we are, a group of women. We've all met each other through a lot of like strong women business groups. Absolutely. And we get together and we lift each other up. And it felt almost this mocking, like, you know, like, I'm good enough, like, rah rah. And that was, it did, I didn't see that the first time, but this time it sort of irked me. It was like poking fun at the Kens, saying that they were good enough, like in a mocking kind of way.
So I sort of have an issue with the whole I am enough thing. And I'm going to struggle to put this into words. I feel on my own podcast like this is an episode coming. But
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I've never really loved the I am enough saying. Enough feels like
basic.
Low.
That's so male. Sorry.
Like the minimum.
Oh, that is the issue with hypermasculinity.
Okay. However, I think that what Greta Gerwig was saying with that, all the guys going, I am enough. Men have always had such a lower bar than women. You could be any idiot and do well, and everyone accepts you for being the fabulous expert that you are. Yes. Whereas, as the mom character portrayed, we women have to constantly prove themselves. You could be a law school graduate of Harvard and the partner in a law firm, and you're still being doubted and challenged. And men can be basically a BA from college, and they consider themselves an expert on everything. And in the media, they're portrayed that way. That's right. I think that's what that was about.
A lot of it's ourselves, isn't it? I'm sorry, you go ahead.
So it's really interesting, again, only having male children and being also a woman of color as a Black American woman, because it was like, oh, I'm a white, beautiful, blonde man, and I can come here and do anything. And but I can't, but I don't understand. And there is a concept of the shift of power. And I do think that the movie really delved into that, where wherever the power may be, in Barbie world, it was a female-centered power. In the real world, I don't know whether you realized it, ladies, but there is the patriarchy, and it exists. And guess what? It is trying hard not to crumble. But in terms of that, one of the problems with sexism, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg talked about that a lot. What she did is she had her career was made on showing how sexism in the law actually made life worse for men. So, for instance, one of the first cases that she did was about how a widower who wasn't afforded the same rights under the laws when his wife had died serving the country as women get when their husbands died. Right? So what she did is show men how sexism actually doesn't work for them. And that's how she started her career, and that's how she, like, that was when she was young.
Like
that was the baseline of the type of work that she did, because she recognized that the people in control, like, for instance, now in the world that we're living in, it's really, I was just listening to an author yesterday in Wesley, oh my gosh, what's his last name? I won't, but his book, White Lash, and he's talking about the fact that white people are saying, in as much as people of color in this country, I am ostracized based on my race. Like, it is hard for me as a white person, because for the first time, a lot of white people have to actually think about race, and particularly white people who may not be Jewish or othered in other ways. You know, there's a complexity about gender that, because it's complex with gender, because, you know, Jewish people tend to live with Jewish people, Black people tend to live with Black people, women and men live together. So it's a different concept of identity when it's gender, because you're still living together as family in a way that the other identities tend to sort of group a little bit more. which is, again, a whole other thing. But the frustration and the issue is for, oh gosh, now I've been drinking too much, so now I'm forgetting what we were talking about. Uh-oh.
Cut that.
Bring us back, Jen.
We don't cut anything. It's uncensored.
So, I think the point we were trying to get at is that the Barbie, Greta Gerwig is so brilliant, and she brings up all of these challenging issues, and she doesn't just bash the men. It is about female empowerment. It is about how the real world is full of patriarchy, but the solution is not to do to men what men have done to women.
Right.
It's to find a way for us to be equal.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
So let me ask a whole different sort of perspective here is, okay, so if you can remember back before you saw the movie or before you even heard about the movie, do you remember, like, what was your view of, if I said, like, what do you think of Barbie? Like, are you pro, like, where'd you land?
Cheryl?
Okay. So I definitely played with Barbies when I was a kid. I loved Barbies. I loved the whole Nirvana lifestyle, live in the house, everything was cute. But I also got that nobody really looks like that. And so then there was guilt. Should I love Barbies? Should I play with Barbies? Is that like bad as a woman to like Barbies? There's this weird mix as you grow up if you were a Barbie fan. And when I did not yet see the movie, my opinion was, that's got to be ridiculous. It's got to be stupid. I can't imagine it would be worth my time. And I wasn't planning to go. So that was my initial thought.
So I actually am similar. Like, I remember having Barbies as a girl, but like I was like, oh God, it's going to be some justifying why there's this like unattainable body type physique of Barbie, and
the measurements, you couldn't even stand up or whatever.
Right. and like literally knowing nothing about anything about the history, if you would have like polled me, like my opinion poll, I would have been like, that evil Mattel. But can I tell you, like in preparation for this conversation, I went and I was like, I wonder when the first working, and I'm not talking street working, but working Barbie, professional Barbie. And it was in the 60s was the first professional Barbie. And so I have
no
a
sex
list.
Worker Barbie in the 60s.
There was no sex worker Barbie that I could.
Actual with a briefcase worker, you're saying.
Right. Like
It was the woman Ruth was amazing.
an employed Barbie. And when I look at the history of Mattel's sort of, and they had other characters, so Barbie's friends, like the first woman of color was actually not called Barbie. There
Crystal.
was Crystal.
That was my first one.
But later they were and later being the 80s, releasing Barbies of all different origins called Barbie. Most recently releasing Barbies with different disabilities or able-bodiedness, different gender identities, all that kind of stuff. When I put the list together, I was like, and the astronaut Barbie that Mattel put out predates the first time we actually had a woman in space. And I was like, okay, so my entire view of Mattel was based on body type, right? Like, whatever is it? Well, like, I don't even know what Barbie's measurements were, but like, that's what I harped on in my mind. And I was so like, this is like, who would support a Barbie movie? Because that was the only thing I knew about. And yes, how closed-minded was I? And now I'm like, actually, I feel like Barbie was sort of a little bit ahead of the social times in terms of releasing these dolls.
So I feel like you're saying that maybe we were made to feel guilty when we shouldn't have been. Are you saying that?
I'm saying the only
we're always supposed to be guilty.
Well, we're women,
Point in the movie,
yeah. But I'm saying like the my lack of paying attention, like the only sort of social commentary around Barbie that bubbled up to my consciousness as an adult. Mind you, mother of 3 boys, like very little interest in dolls in our house, except when they were very little. So I didn't have that much ongoing exposure, but my limited knowledge was all about the physique and this like the beautiful blonde white woman, and how like that is the standard of what little girls are supposed to attain. And that pissed me off because I didn't opened the curtain to see that was not the only part of this
I think you have a very
Barbie.
universal experience with as women who experience Barbie. But because I grew up with 4 brothers and never played with a Barbie doll, I played with Johnny West and Jane West and Chief Cherokee and G.I. Joe and G.I. Jane. And it wasn't really my whole entire childhood. I was such a tomboy. And in my life, I definitely have never had that kind of weird feeling about Barbie. I didn't really care about the movie, but I also didn't have a negative feeling about it. And so my experience was a little bit different. And I think that's why I am the person I am. Like, I've just always done whatever I wanted to do and gotten away with it because I've never felt that limitation. I don't know why. But anyway, I think as we 3 white women sitting here had a very different experience than you probably did with Barbie. So you should tell us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Well, thank you for all of it. Karen has been such a just mentor and really great, compassionate human being just in general, but ally, I mean, I think that word's getting a little used, but female assassin for me right? Isn't that better than ally? Ally sounds like blah. But yeah, but
get a t-shirt with that.
Oh, I will get it for you. But Karen has always been really conscientious of my non-whiteness, for lack of a better word, and making sure that not just for me, but for all women of color, women in general, and certainly women of color, that she always makes sure that she is saving that space for us to be like snuggled on right next to you lovely women here. For me, it was Crystal. My first Barbie was Crystal. She was black. I wasn't really a doll person because I like boys. I mean, it's why God kind of was like, okay, we're going to give her sons. But what was interesting is...
That all makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It a little bit? Doesn't it a little bit? Right? But I also was called, like some of my friends after college, before law school, I deferred from law school and I worked as a cocktail waitress. And it was super fun. It was really great. And I was deemed Black Girl Barbie. That's what they called me. And, I was just like, I don't even know, but I guess. So I think that's why Barbie itself, even as a girl who didn't really like Barbies, didn't really like dolls, loved books, loved, all of those things, loved libraries, not really dolls. The complacency of domesticity did not really ring with me, but it was kind of funny because they're like, you're Black Girl Barbie. I'm like, she's called Crystal. And I had her, and I liked her, but, I guess I can play her. But it also is in terms of intersectionality, when you talk about being female, I'm black, but there's a gaze, right? And I am deemed under the gaze that we have decided in our society is attractive, is highly attractive, right? That is what has been deemed as my place. And so that in itself, as someone who really was a bookworm, who was never thought of or conceived of attractiveness as something that was something to achieve or something to be. It was
wanted to be taken seriously. So when I was younger, I loved dancing, I loved books, I loved all sorts of things that I love. And I was a cheerleader. I went out for cheerleading with the Eagles. I became an Eagles cheerleader. I was at Swarthmore College at the time. And the Philadelphia Inquirer actually wrote a whole story that was basically, now that I look back in 1993, being like, oh my God, guys, guess what? She's smart and attractive and black simultaneously. We need to put this
whole
in
package.
We need to put this in the newspaper because this is news.
Like she's a unicorn.
Yeah. This is right. So that is, and again, it's one of the reasons why I loved the fact that Jen actually wanted to show this movie, something that I wanted to see. I'm just a little busy running around, being CEO Black Barbie, to go to movies. And obviously my sons were not interested at all in seeing this, but it was just what I loved about the moment is being able to dress in my absolute most Barbiness, sit down with women who, those I know, those I don't, I knew that I was going to be in a place that I felt comfort, that I felt belonging, that I felt respect, that even though I was showing up late because I was doing my like CEO Barbie stuff before and my mom Barbie stuff, that I would be able to come and just be not even black girl Barbie, but be just Barbie with the Barbies, you know? And that was what was so exciting to me about having this opportunity and seeing this movie, because again, like, it's one of those things where, like, the girls' night out, and I do see with Kins, I'm like, oh, wow, men aren't able to do that. They don't do girls' nights out, like boys' night out. And that's up for them to be able to do, but that's what you created for us. And that was really meaningful and special. So,
well, thank you. And what's interesting is we had a couple other Barbies here this evening. And what's fascinating is they both had to leave to go to the same event in DC. One of the Barbies, winning an award for her professional life. The other one going in support of her husband winning an award. So two separate Barbies going from here to that same event. And there was
a prestigious event in DC.
Where some big government awards were being given out in recognition of their professional achievements. So, but I thought that was like so telling, like that the one was a Barbie, but one was a Barbie in her role as a supporting spouse, and
which is its own special Barbie.
That's right, just like the woman in the movie said. Was that America? What's her
America
name?
Ferrera? Yeah.
She said, like, why can't there just be an ordinary Barbie? Yeah. Why do they all have to be surgeons or engineers or astronauts?
She works.
Yeah,
She doesn't work.
like we're all
So
valuable.
that's such a great lead into what I want to ask, because I feel like this has been coming up with every guest lately, from a different angle, but the same idea of, are you an entrepreneur or a female entrepreneur? Where do you hang your hat and why?
Yeah, so I'm going to sort of answer you, and I'm also going to respond to something you said. I'm going to cheat a little bit.
I love the cheat.
So I'm a white woman, and so I can't speak on the race side of this, but the smart versus pretty is something that I grew up with. My sister was the pretty one, and I was the smart one. I'm using air quotes.
Yep.
And that is so damaging for both. She's an architect.
And you're gorgeous.
And you're gorgeous.
I mean, what the heck?
I mean,
like, it was ridiculous.
Right.
It was ridiculous.
Exactly.
Ridiculous. Why did it have to be that way? Why is there always a label? And I understand that we're comforted when we label people and they like make sense in our heads, in our world. But the labels are just ridiculous.
Too
and I
limiting
completely
and
forgot
damaging.
the question.
Oh, if you're a female entrepreneur.
The label. So I really like women's networking groups, and that's where I met both of you originally, and we just met today.
Absolutely.
But I really like the energy. I like meeting other women. I like that kind of bonding opportunity, but I don't necessarily like the label of fempreneur, because I don't think what I'm doing with my business or my professional life has anything to do with whether I'm a mom or whether I'm a woman or whether I'm a wife.
Interesting.
Gotcha. Karen, what about you?
So, well, Jennifer, I can't even answer this question without talking about one of the first times I met you, when we were part of Awesome Women Entrepreneurs. It was a new group in Arlington. It was for women to be able to support each other, because when you're so I am fiercely a woman entrepreneur, because when you are competing against men in the patriarchy, men have a lot of advantages. And I felt like women, when they get together and support each other, which brings out the best selves of every woman, we can beat them at their own game. They already have the good old boy network. They already have the referrals to each other. They play golf, all these different things. And I felt so strongly that we needed to create that. And you, at one of our first meetings, said, I was on the phone with a baby throwing up down my back and a client yelling at me. And I was running my business, and that could never have happened if I had been in a different environment. Like literally every woman who came to that group said that the corporate world didn't work for them and didn't fit for them. And they ended up finding their passion, going on their own way, and becoming unbelievably successful. Like, look at you, your business is so successful, and we're on your podcast. And it's so true that women supporting women gives women an edge that they didn't have otherwise. And I only wish, again, to take this more global, I wish all the women in the world would get together and reject the status quo for how we deal with conflict, war, violence, all of these things. I feel like I know all the women on the ground agree with it, but if the women leaders in the world and the women on the ground all rose up the way we did, like at the Women's March and with the Me Too movement, we could change the way the world works. And right now it's very much the patriarchy.
So one of the things that I said to my fiance, who is Canadian and in the military, he's a colonel in his army, and I just texted him and said, what if America and Palestine and Israel were run by women?
Mm-hmm. I think that all the time.
Right? He's from a country that actually has a lot of women in power, Germany. Like, those countries exist.
Yeah.
There are countries where women are actually, if they're not the actual head of power, they have a big voice. They have a big voice. They are supporting it. We are not in one of those countries. Right? So what if we took these 3 countries that I just mentioned? And I have no doubt that there are women in Israel. I have no doubt that there are women in Palestine that are attempting and thinking about the same things that we are. But what do we do to really move that forward? Like,
because their societies are very patriarchal, and the answer is
ours.
Just like in Barbie, to make the world less patriarchal. That is the answer. I firmly believe that about business, about world peace, everything.
All of it. All of it.
I was just going to say, and the piece I got out of Barbie the second time was that exactly what you said doesn't have to mean that all the men have to be weak and all the women have to be always in power. There's a balance. Right. It's not about one always over the other, whichever way.
Well, yeah, but I thought, I mean, and this is not to make light at all of the world situation, but it's ironic that in Barbie, for the women to take back their power, they lure the men into having a quote unquote fight.
I mean, that's strategy, ladies. Strategize.
I know, but
you strategize.
But they're like, well, men will fight each other, so let's get them to. That's true.
Yeah. But I still, and that's why
I wish we could figure out a way to do that on a bigger scale.
I just also think that, and Al Gore had actually said that in his book or something, but. Well, what is masculine, right? Like, what are we teaching boys?
Right.
For those of us who are raising boys, for my boys, what I hope they think is not toxic masculinity and wearing fur and big gold chains and riding horses. I think it's actually using what powers they have for the good of other people who have less.
I agree with that, but I think that our big society, entertainment, sports, it all says that success, celebrity, power, money, that is what people respect in our society.
But that's all coming from the United States.
Well, it is.
I agree with you. Yeah. I agree. Like, we are saying those things are masculine, but that's not coming from France. That's not coming from Australia. That's what we are doing. That's what we're giving in America. So if we can get to the point where maybe we ladies, right, like all of us, lean in. I was like disgusted. I'm like, oh my God, do I have to be like, I'm not smart. Can you tell me something? But if I have to do that to get all the rest of American women on board so that we can be the change makers that everybody needs from us, I guess, I'm going to have to sleep on it because it's horrible. But
so just to bring this to, I feel like we need another conversation around like massive world conflict, because you are some of the smartest women I know, and I think that there's a lot we could probably bring to light through smart discussion. But back to this silly little movie that is
Not silly at all.
Is not silly at all. And I think, I mean, my male children have watched it. I watched it with my husband the first time. I don't think that they have gotten deep and contemplative about it in hindsight the way that I have with the women in my life. So what do you say to the men in your life who either have or haven't seen it about what you want them to take away from this movie?
I'm just going to pause and say, what did the men in your life say about it? Because my son and husband have not seen it. So I would love to
That's such a great question. So what my 15-year-old said was, I think that's something that women will care about more, or girls will care about more. I think it went over his head, to be honest. I think my husband was like, "Oh, well, that was playful," and it kind of dragged in the middle. And I was like, "Yeah, it did kind of drag in the middle." The second time around, I didn't see the dragging because I'd also done a lot more reading about it, and so I was looking for some of the stuff I'd missed the first time. There's a lot in there. It's deep, right? But like on the face of it, if you walk in blind, like I did on the first time, and my husband did on the first time, blind, you've not been predisposed to this movie. You're going to be like, oh, that was sort of fun at times. It got really draggy at times. And, some of it was deep and some of it was playful. Like, if you don't put a lot of deep thought into it, it can just be an entertaining couple of hours, right?
Totally agree. When I first saw it, it was evening. And of course, I get tired in the evening. And I thought it dragged too. But today, with all of you and the female energy in the room, I didn't feel that way at all. I caught a lot of things that I had missed the first time. And of course, it's because it's about women and our struggle. And it's not that surprising. I haven't asked Steve what he thought. He watched it with me, my husband. But I think that he probably thought the way your husband and sons thought, like it was fun and light, and he had read a lot of positive reviews of it. But that's not their struggle. So why would they feel too passionate about it? It's our struggle. It's the story of our lives.
Right.
Whytni, from your perspective, in addition to the question about men, but like, how do you feel that women of color, for example, were represented, or other marginalized groups? Were you watching with that eye at all?
Oh, I watch it with all the eyes. Yes. I mean, for me, the femaleness and the blackness and the Black Americanness they're tied. Like, I don't know the distinction between the two because it's so, me being female and me being Black American are just so integral to who I am. I have no idea how to dissect that intersection. But it was intense. Again, I had heard and seen, I think American Ferrara did a very good job in lots of ways of being that. I'm a little cynical, so I'm like, oh, of course they pick someone who's of color, she's Latina, like so. I mean, you see all of the things that they do in movies, but I do think that the movie was geared towards a white gaze, which is fine, because white people need to see a lot of things. They need to gaze. They need a lot of gazing, right? Like, I'm okay with that. But I do think that as a person who is both Black and female, but is also born in America, English speaking, very well educated, from a family that loves her, that also speaks English. Like, I have a lot of identities associated with me that make me part of the people who need to be part of the problem solving. So it's not necessarily very easy, but it is part of my passion and part of my responsibility as a humanitarian that cares about other people to shoulder those, to sit with people who may other me and be othered, so that I can make room for people who are like me, who may not have had the privileges that I've had. So it was. I think it's good. I think as a piece of art, as someone who is in the art world in my day job, I think that it was a good, I mean, that's why we're sitting around talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. I think that it did an excellent job of creating a conversation. And I think that that makes it art, and it makes it something that people will be looking at for years.
Thanks for listening to The M Word. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Subscribe and never miss a podcast. Visit arlingtonstrategy.com for more. The M Word is an Arlington Strategy production hosted by Jennifer Mulchandani. Our theme music is by Moochie. Graphic design by Kayla Fagan and Emily Rare. Sound engineering and editing by Ben Mulchandani.